buried my courage alongside the old man.
Oh, this particular character is a menace. We're talking about Aerion Targaryen. Aerion really is a troublemaker of the show. You know, he's the one that is really the spoiled brat for this whole thing. You know, being the fact that now we're in the age where Targaryens had civil war, and the pride of Targaryens, I won't say is as high as it used to be. You know, dragons don't exist no more like that. The last dragon was Rhaenyra's dragon. Rhaenyra's son's dragon, should I say, Aegon the Third. That was the last dragon they had. They had to spoil that. Once that dragon was extinct, there was no more dragons at the time. So you could almost imagine that at this time, the whole pride of the whole Targaryens isn't that much of a big deal. But from what we're seeing, you know, you see Aerion takes this, you know, he's different. He's looking down on people. He feels he's so upper class, even with the fact that he's not even in direct lineage. You know, he's a low prince, to be fair. But it's always those ones that make the most noise. You know? So you can see how Aerion, you know, he resembles the side of the Targaryens that just, they're the bad Targaryens. They're not the humble Targaryens. They're not the good Targaryens. They're the bad Targaryens. And you can imagine that he resembles Viserys. Viserys being the one in Game of Thrones who was the brother of Daenerys. The only difference is that at least Viserys, he was going for it. He was definitely going for it in general. Like, he had huge issues moving from house to house, place to place, given the fact that that was the time they were hunting the Targaryens. So you can imagine that he was just fighting for his life. Not that he was right, but he was fighting for his life. Aerion, the complete different. He has no reason to be this bad, you know. With the amount of upbringing he has and the privilege he has, you'd think that, you know, he'd be a reasonable person, but no, he's a menace. One big thing that you see, especially in the first trailers, is the fact that he's obsessed with dragons. And I think that's one big thing that we all know in the show that it shows. You know, you look at Daemon, for example, and he brings this out that, you know, it's the dragons that made us. You know, we won't be anything without the dragons. That's one thing that I feel as though for Aerion, he takes that so intense. You see that in his armor. You know, like he's really trying to show the posture, what it is to be a dragon. The dragon armor, still trying to incite fear that they don't have because there is no dragons to incite fear for. So going and unpacking the show, and I think you see it in a new trailer, you see that there is an issue. He has an issue with the Night Duncan. And I think his evil wickedness made us like Duncan in the show. You know, he becomes a menace and we end up loving Duncan as he has to fight that. So it starts off with him, of course, doing damage to a poor girl, treating her so terrible, where Duncan sticks up and tries to defend, being the knight, an honorable knight he should be. It gets to the process where we have Aerion trying to call for his head. He's ordering him, no, sort this guy out. This guy needs to be sorted out. Funny enough, we see that his brother, Egg, who completely cannot stand him at all, they're brothers, he orders them not to and reveals himself and says, look, don't do that. I don't want that to be the case. You know, he's not done anything wrong, and orders them not to do it, which causes a dispute. They bring that up to Baelor. Now Baelor's in the middle of this, and you see that in the new trailer where he's telling Duncan, like, look, bro, he want your head. So touching on that whole dynamic, you see that Egg and Aerion being brothers, they're completely two different people. One bad, one good. Egg in general, he goes through a lot. You know, he was bullied by Aerion a fair few times, and he really, really, really can't stand him. You know, the difference between the two as well is the fact that we have Aerion who showboats his hair. You know, he's so glad and proud that he has the white hair. Whereas Egg, you know, they've shaved Egg's hair off. He's not really trying to be seen as a Targaryen as much due to the risks of, you know, them spotting them out. Because when you see white hair, you know who they are. So you see, you know, they really have two opposite identities. And this will show a lot in this particular show of Knights of the Seven Kingdoms. So what this guy, this Aerion does is that he pushes and drives for him and the knight to have what we call a trial, but a 7 trial. You know, we're talking about Aerion brings his fighters, and Duncan brings his fighters, 7 against 7. The crazy thing is that Aerion, he can just bring his brothers. He's got the best fighters in the kingdom, you know, and one of those include Baelor, which becomes sad because imagine you're dragging people into a situation that they don't even really, at first, they ain't even really with, but because they're with you, they've got no choice but to put themselves in the situation. That's why you've always got to be careful who you're around. You got to be careful of your family because that could put you into a huge issue. You see in the battle that this causes problems, Baelor dies. Spoiler alert, guys. But it's in the books. And they have to outcast Aerion, you know. The guy who believes he's a dragon, they had to outcast him. You know. And I don't know how far they'll go through in the books in terms of I don't know how far they'll go through in the series in terms of bringing these books out because, you know, if we go further, you see a lot more of what happens in the books. You know, and the issues going forward is the fact that you see that at the end, and I think it's been quoted a bit in Game of Thrones. You've seen Game of Thrones; they kind of spoil it as well. That he ends up drinking, you know, dragon fire, which for some reason he just wanted to become a dragon, and this is how he dies in the show, in the books, should I say? And maybe we don't know if we'll get that far. Maybe not. You know, that's further on. But you can see how crazy he is. And I think we'll see a lot in this show how much he wants to be a dragon. Like, that's going to be insane to see, but that's going to be the case. We're going to see that a lot. We're going to see how much he wants to be a dragon. We're going to see how much that means to him. And that's just going to be insane. Like, bro, what? Dragon? Like, you know, and I think it's funny how we're going to have that parallel with the House of Dragons because we're going to see the Targaryens with actual dragons and then we're going to see people who think they're dragons. You know, so I think this is going to be very interesting. And I think his character is going to be key to make this show successful because he's an antagonist. You know, he's going to be the main thing going forward for this show. So you can almost imagine that, yeah, this is going to be insane. This is going to be an insane battle. So we can't wait to see this coming out January. And we're going to have more breakdowns for you guys as we do this. So guys, make sure, like, comment, subscribe. Let's go.